Okay, good. They're working on that. Okay.
Okay. So, yeah, so
Okay,
that's what,
today, my name is Winnie Wilkinson. I'm the host of Hey Neighbor Hey, a local TV talk show in the town of St. Albans, Vermont. And we are at the Northwest Access TV station studio right now. Today we have our guest, who is Tina Cook. She is a Vermonter. She has experienced the Vermont way, and she would just like to talk about our secure, how complacent we are with information that is all over that other people can use, but even without our knowledge, and also give her expertise in her experience with housing and how your credit is used and everything else. So I now introduce to you via Zoom Miss Tina Cook.
hey neighbor, hey.
Hey.
So I'm coming to you from Southern Vermont, and so I just want to really just talk about what it's like living as a Black Vermonter, and why Vermont is, persistently such a white state. And there are reasons behind that. So it all basically comes down to economics. So um, I want to talk about, redlining. That is the control that is the largest and most effective control mechanism to, keep Vermont as white as it is. So, a lot of people think about redlining as being strictly about housing, but it's really about the credit or the denial of credit, right? Because, in order to survive and weather downturns, you need to be able to have equal access to credit. And unfortunately, Vermont is not doing such a great job. And when you look at Vermont as a whole, you see that white people are doing well, but non-white people are being disparately impacted by a lot of the policies that are in place. When I'm talking a lot, I mean housing, credit, jobs. So everything is tied to the information that, banks have on us. So, or insurance companies have on us, or the healthcare department has on us, or the DMV has on us, you know. So it's very important to safeguard these, data, all this data, but we're not doing such a great job of that either. So, over the years, we've heard of tons of data breaches, right? And it
Yes.
has affected us all, but we're not doing such a great job of figuring out where these breaches are happening, why they're happening. Often because a lot of the agencies that are tasked with monitoring these systems, there's very few people in these departments. So, and they're so used to doing things the way that their predecessor taught them, or that they've done for years, but they've done it incorrectly to help everyone, So, and it's difficult in this state to get anyone to pay attention to it because being so white, it's not impacting them, so they don't see it as a priority. But they're starting to feel it now, right?
Yes.
Because a lot of the same things that have been happening to us for years is now happening to everyone. And so, we've been, as they say, the canary in the cave mine. We've been warning about these things. We're not separate, even though we'd like to see, think that we are. Some people really are working very hard to keep us all separated. And I do understand the reason that they're choosing to do that. And, it's very difficult to track homogenized communities. So, so they're, in order to keep track on every individual, it's a lot easier to track them if you can corral them into certain neighborhoods.
Exactly.
So that's what I've been studying and analyzing and trying to share as much information as I can with policymakers so that they can, make better decisions. And the banks themselves need more scrutiny and transparency for sure, especially with the new legislation, blocks and changes and the dismantling of different protections for marginalized communities. It's really disturbing. So I'm like, this is segregation and racism and redlining. They can call it whatever they want. They're saying that housing prices will be affected. Well, not in diverse communities, they're not. Maybe in racist communities, but that's all perceived. That is all affected by them. So
Yeah.
there's a lot that they can do. You have any questions? Yeah.
Yes, I just want to, before you dive into the statistics and your research, do you think that there should be systemic reform in the state of Vermont as well?
Absolutely. So there's actually a lot of laws that are already on the books that are just absolutely not being used. Not even, looked at. And a lot of them are, I don't know how many people actually even know that they exist. I'm running into a lot of that. I've never heard of that before. You might know more about that than I do. And I'm like, but that isn't my job. I do this for fun. So, you should know about these things. And it's the most difficult thing that I found in trying to get assistance or just answers is that there's so many layers of government, but no one really knows who's tasked with monitoring the banks. They say it's the Department of Financial Regulation, but they don't really monitor the banks individually. They rely on the FCC or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which we know now is being shuttered. So I'm like, so who's going to regulate? Who's going to protect the consumers in Vermont? Specifically, but not just in Vermont, but statewide. So this is all happening all across the country. So I've decided that I want to look at it. I want to look at the data. I want to see what's happening. I want to get a clear picture of the what and the why, and who's performing and who's not, and where we can do better. And I really, really think the legislature needs to be informed. I mean, because what's the point of having laws if there's no enforcement of these laws?
That is a huge problem within the state of Vermont. In my observation, I've noticed that there are laws, but there's no reinforcement. And where there's laws that are broken and there's no repercussion or nothing happening because the laws are not being enforced, so that the persons who are being discriminated against can at least know that the state, our legislators and our senators and governor do care about us when we're violated.
And they often want to push this off on the federal government and say, this is where you need to go to. But no, the states have the power to to act locally and, county by county. You can see the data county by county. It's clear. When I look at it and it's compiled, maybe no one's just ever compiled it and taken a look at it, as a whole, and how it is affecting the community, in real time. So that's going to be very important, I think. And the banks have the power and the ability to do this themselves. So, and it's all about the will. Maybe certain communities need to be better scrutinized.
Yes.
It's all about the patterns. I love patterns.
Right. It's all about a pattern. But I'm interested to know more about the research, especially that involves the redlining, because from volunteering with different organizations within the state of Vermont, and listening to where certain cases or certain areas and where they work, I find it interesting that in the areas where we have the concentrated marginalized communities are the ones that have the less services or the least services. However, if there's anything concerning grants and why the grants is needed, suddenly the focus becomes the marginalized communities in the state of Vermont. Well, when
Exactly.
did the marginalized community become this important? And it's obvious because now you need the funding.
But are the funds actually being used in the marginalized
No,
community?
it's not.
Exactly.
Because
So
when
that's
I request, as a public person and as an American citizen with an accent, I requested the statistic demographic of the people who were served by a particular agency in the state of Vermont. It was frowned upon, and a lot of retaliatory behaviors start showing up because this will show exactly who you're serving and what you're doing.
Yeah, where's the money going?
Where is the money? Because HUD is very specific when they give money, who's supposed to be helped.
Correct, and not just HUD, the state of Vermont has statutes in place that are not being enforced because there is not the oversight that is needed. And so what I'm finding is that the community has to be informed, and the community has to be the one to, bring these claims to the administration. And if they choose to do nothing, then I'm finding that the individual is having to act themselves. So that's why it's very important to know the laws of the land that you live under. And I'm sure, we don't really have all the time in the world to learn something new, but, it affects us, we need to learn.
Exactly.
So, to us to share information as a community and to work together. And that's been the bottleneck here in Vermont, is that everyone is so siloed in their own little worlds trying to survive. They don't understand that by being in these silos, the information does not transfer of the reason why they're having to work so hard. So,
Right.
If we really are proactive, we could change the economic structure of Vermont. And by doing these small reforms,
Systemic
certain-
reforms.
Correct, systemic reforms, because, we've got to change up the way we've been doing things, because they no longer serve us. They no longer serve everybody in the beginning, but now they're starting to, trickle down onto, individuals themselves that previously were served. So.
And to keep in mind, and this is my observation again, when these laws were written, the marginalized community was not part and parcel of those laws, rules, regulations, and procedures. So we are actually now following laws, as supposed to follow laws, rules, and regulations that we were not even part and parcel of that consensus of how to write a bill to include us in our culture, our hair, our accents, and everything else. So we need systemic reform, and I believe with systemic reform, it will also assist with the banking, with housing, with rental, when it comes to the marginalized community.
Correct. And yeah, because without representation, no one's going to pay attention because they don't even understand it, or they don't know it exists.
Exactly.
So that's important. But, how about we just use existing laws and we enforce the existing laws that are on the books already? Because, during the civil rights movement, they worked very hard to by the system and make it work for everyone. So, we're just like forgetting that these laws exist and that they're there for a reason. And, as we're seeing, they're being trampled upon and torn away from us. And it's very specific and very targeted, So I'm like, it's all about, the finances of a region and, to keep the marginalized renters rather than homeowners, control of the land. We've got zoning laws and issues, that are very, very tied into racial demographics, protected class, status stuff that is supposed to be, eradicated and not even used, but it's almost like they just cannot give up that data point,
Yes.
to use it because it is too profitable. Extraction of wealth from the marginalized community, the labor force is very profitable. So,
Yes.
well, what do we call that? The system is based in slavery. It's never gonna change unless there's the will of the people. But it's much more profitable to diversify. Everybody
Yes.
knows this when you're dealing with a portfolio, anything to do with financials, it's much better to diversify.
Yes.
But I guess, people are not gonna believe it until they see the data, and even then, they like to question data. But, well, let's turn the data into a pretty picture. So I am a certified data analyst storyteller. And so it's very
Thank you.
important. I like to paint pretty pictures with data so that you can see. And that brings me back to the data breaches that, have been happening to us. They're able to use that data to paint a pretty picture, to,
Yes.
identify you, down to the minutia detail of your lives.
Yes.
I have a friend calling it stalkerware, but I know, but this data is used to make corporations millions.
Yes.
So, and in some cases billions. So, I've been in this game for quite some time. I'm a self-taught internet marketing expert. I taught myself data analytics. It's fun for me. Search engine marketing. So I understand, how databases work, how data is collected, and how to use it.
Yep. And because of the expertise that is, people are taking their time to get into so that they could now understand the money, the funds, how it is attained and how it's used and who is used for. I don't believe that some of the equities in the state of Vermont understand that now you can actually trace down to the penny of where the money is, where it came from, where it is, where it's going, and where it's been.
And who it's not going to, and where it's meant to go, and according to law, but is not being scrutinized or regulated or just even considered.
Right.
So I'm finding that it's just going to have to be up to us as the marginalized communities to inform ourselves and educate ourselves and hold the officials that we as taxpayers have voted into often or have been placed by people we've voted in to office, hold them accountable for doing the job that they are tasked with. And it's a difficult one, if we have a small department without an investigative department,
Forensic audits.
Yes, no, not even just forensic. That's to have their office audited, which often I believe is important because you can't catch everything when you're in the weeds. But what I think is important is like, for instance, in the Attorney General's office, I was told that they don't have an investigative department for consumer crimes, which is weird to me. So the person with the complaint has to present and find all the evidence themselves.
Yes.
And of course, the average Joe who's been wronged is not going to know how to do that. So, I'd love to see the Vermont judiciary and the bar and the legislature and the administration really work on providing their constituents and the community with
Marginalized.
a marginalized community specifically, since we're specifically being targeted, It's like, they have the rules and the laws and the statutes in place to, to prosecute people who target based on these protected classes, but no one's doing it. So, yeah, or, just at least provide not even representation, because like, in my case, I couldn't even get anyone to review any of my work, you know? They said they didn't have the capacity to litigate it, and I was like, I hadn't even asked you to
To
litigate
litigate
it.
it, right.
Yeah, I had just asked you to review it, and I can't even get that far. So, that's very problematic, because that's not only, I'm not able to do this, it's like, no, you're actually turning someone away when you've got a prima facie, which means in your face, examples of racial discrimination, and you're deciding not to do anything with it. You don't have that right.
Right,
That's
exactly.
contrary to the law. So, I am concerned about a lot of that.
Right, and I went to Washington D.C. for the Martin Luther King celebration for 2025, and I was one of the presenters in the groups. And when I spoke about discrimination in Vermont, I got this because Vermont is not considered to have that at all because we're a liberal state.
But
And
how do you get so white unless there's some form of discrimination? And now I can tie it to data directly.
exactly,
So,
well, I would love to hear that part of it, the discrimination and the data and the redlining.
the redlining, that's where the storytelling and the picture painting with data comes in, because otherwise, it's always someone that's gonna, try and refute you. Because
Yes.
they just love their racism. I don't understand it. I'm like, but you're losing money being racist, but, you can't convince people of that. I don't understand that. So I'm also looking at other data that's showing that, Black people often, see diverse communities as much more, prosperous or preferable, and then their second preference would be, all Black communities. But
Yes.
because the theory was that, Black people, Asian, we all want to be in our own, race-defined communities. But it's not. It's like, it's really the mindsets that need to be changed, because what is this data is showing is that it's white people who think that an all-white community is much more preferential and better, et cetera. And they don't even consider, diversity being, even though the data is showing that a more diverse community is much more prosperous. So it's a mind shift that people have ingrained in them, and they're not even aware of it. So they may think that they're liberal, but their actions are showing different.
And some people pretend well.
Well, there's that. So yeah, that's the disillusion that I've had to experience, is like this a lot of this is done on purpose, and that was hard for me. I was like, being targeted, and people are specifically using your data to find you to do harm.
Yes.
And that's very difficult to deal with as an American. I contribute a lot to this country, a lot by way of
Your
finance.
ancestors as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we that's how I got here, was because, the best, strongest, fastest survive, so that I could exist.
Exactly.
And I'm going to be my best, strongest, fastest, as well. So, my whole goal here is civil rights activism,
Humanitarian.
analysis, yes, and,
Yes.
to inform the communities that are being targeted and marginalized, because, it's got to stop. It's got to stop sometime.
In order for it to stop, people got to know that it exists, because some people are not aware of the fact that it exists.
Yeah, and I think if there's enough of a collective understanding that, yes, here's the empirical data proving that it exists, now what? But right now everybody's like, oh, I'm not so sure, maybe, I don't know, I haven't received any proof of it. I'm like, So let's
Statistics,
get,
there's one thing that you cannot manipulate is statistics. And not and in the banking world they call it the real statistics. Like you have the GDP and the real GDP. And
correct.
so in our situation here in the state of Vermont, I would say that the real statistics will show you exactly that we do have a chronic case of redlining.
Correct.
We do have a chronic case of the funds that is supposed to be for the marginalized people. The service is not in the marginalized communities. And even if there is a case that is publicly saying that, oh, we won a hundred and whatever $1,000 in a case in Woodstock, how much money did it cost for that case to even get to court? And that amount on state level for that kind of case is below, way below. And judging from the case that happened in Woodstock, Winooski and South Burlington and Burlington as well, there's a lot of those cases with the same scenario that was never looked at.
Marginalized communities that you can see on a map, on a Home Mortgage Disclosure Act map, that you can see it on a credit insecurity index map.
Yep.
You know, it's obvious to me. I like maps, and I like this information. But when you look at the people who are collecting a lot of this data, because a lot of it is out there for other states, Vermont mysteriously is missing in a lot of that data.
Yes.
In the redlining.
Yes.
I don't know if there's just not the will to explore the racist history of Vermont. They like the idea of being the so-called first to abolish slavery, but no, you didn't.
Exactly. But on that point, and this is the consensus I got from attending the Martin Luther King celebration and all the different conferences in the state of Washington, in Washington, D.C., in Baltimore, and Philadelphia, is that Vermont is supposed to be the moral compass of everything. And I'm saying, well, we do experience discrimination there, and it's something that is not, there's not enough people who are willing to be open, do their job that they're getting paid for. And so we have this cookie cutter kind of approach to discrimination.
Right. And then there's the systems changes that delay, justice and delay, so people move in and out of these positions of power. By the time any of this is exposed, or you do expose it and then nothing's done, and then the next administration comes in and, you have to repeat to them, and then nothing gets done, and then the next administration, So a lot of us just don't have 50, 100 years to fight for this again.
Exactly, but I believe that, and thanks to, I want to say, give honor where honor is due, thanks to people like OC from Bronx, New York, thanks to Representative Jasmine Crockett, thanks to militia out of Boston, people who are spilling the tea because they got the receipt. And so it's happening. So we in the state of Vermont, we also got to spill some tea because we got the receipts.
Yes, that younger generation really is bright. So that gives me hope in the future that, eventually there will be some accountability. But, at this point, justice delayed is justice denied.
Yes.
So I need accountability within my lifetime.
Yes.
That's why, I've chosen to do this voluntarily rather than, seek a position or, get paid for any of this, not even a donations for this. And it's very taxing, and I understand why, they don't seek to take this on, but my goal is to simplify it.
Yes.
Done it, simplified systems for corporations. I can, Fortune 500 corporations, I can do the same thing for hopefully tackling redlining. But what I'm finding and I'm hoping is not the case. There's just the will to keep things the way it is.
Yes. Yes. Same old, same old.
Yeah, so I'm not, interested in fighting against that piece of system. That's a collective thing. Why, I guess I am with providing the data. That's my way of fighting, that's those that want to keep, Vermont segregated and redlined.
Yes.
So,
Well,
that's
this
what
is
is happening.
this was a loaded conversation, and again, I believe that we should have a panel of the marginalized community from different areas within the state of Vermont to have something like this, like a Zoom meeting, and so that we could get this information out there. And when we have it out there, especially like in YouTube form, and anyone in any state and around the world could actually look at it and hear the stories that are coming out from the state of Vermont, who is supposed to be the moral spectrum of everything good, is what happens in the state of Vermont, to hear our side as part of the marginalized community and how we are trying to coexist to exist. And we'll take our time to do work like this and have conversations like this so that we could be better understood and not be considered as an angry black person because you have violated me and I'm telling you no. And I want to know what part to know you don't understand, if it's the N or the O, so that I explain it to you so that we could come on the same page that no means no.
Exactly, where I'm not, I'm tired of being dismissed, I can take that for only so long before I have to raise my voice. So if I come across as the angry black woman, you gotta ask yourself, what did you do to get me to that point? Because I feel like I'm pretty laid back. And
I am laid back too. I am laid back too. And if I have to speak up, you will know in no uncertain terms what I'm talking about, even with an accent.
I love your accent. What are they
Oh,
trying
well,
to tell you?
oh,
You're multilingual. Like, how
okay.
impressive is that?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Like with our sister Jasmine Crockett, when her eyelashes was a problem, a lot of people said, "I like your eyelashes." So I'm glad that you like my accent.
Exactly. I'm gonna throw out some pins in the future, in honor of young Miss Crockett.
Thank you. Well, this will bring us to the end of our conversation today with Ms. Tina Cook, and she's doing a really extraordinary work here in the state of Vermont to get live data to prove the fact that we are working together to come together to coexist to exist, and also that we could express knowledge about both sides of everyone that is concerned so that we could work together. And this is Hey Neighbor Hey with host Winnie Wilkinson, and you could always get this on our YouTube channel, and we are going to bring you some more stimulating, thought-provoking conversations about our lives here in the state of Vermont. One love. Peace out.